Welcome to episode 3 of Ted's Book Talk. My name is Ted Sutton. Currently, I'm a law student at the University of Wyoming College of Law, and I'm also working as an incorporation specialist here at Corporate Direct this summer. Today, I'm joined by Rich Dad advisor Blair Singer. He's the author of Sales Dogs and Team Code of Honor. In addition to that, he's a world-renowned sales trainer. He's so good at what he does that he trains other sales trainers to be better sales trainers. In addition to that, he's also the author of Little Voice Mastery, which is the book topic of today. Blair, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for doing this interview. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I thank you for coming on. I mean, this is really beneficial to me as well.
Good.
So, Blair, I've known you since I was 6 years old, back when you and my dad were early Rich Dad advisors back in the day.
Right.
Yeah, and the last time I saw you, we were actually skiing at Heavenly a few years ago.
I remember that. I think we were on the Nevada side as well, and we met up at one of the lifts. I remember that distinctly.
Yeah, and I think we went into Mott Canyon, I remember. So, yeah. Well, Nevada's the better side, in my opinion.
Always.
Oh, for sure. So, I've known you for 20-some years, and I finally got around to reading your book. So I think we just jump into it right now. So the topic is little voice mastery, and I think everyone knows that we have a little voice inside our head. So how specifically do you define it?
Well, for anybody that's listening, if you don't know what the little voice is, it's that thing in your head that just said, one little voice. I don't have a little voice. That's the one. That's the one I'm talking about. And it has all different shapes, sizes, and sounds. Sometimes it sounds like my mother. Sometimes it sounds like my father. Sometimes it sounds like the media. It could be lots of different things. So what the little voice is really that incessant chatter that goes on in your head. Your mind just ping pongs all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what a lot of people, and the reason I call it your little voice is because it's not necessarily the real you making those thoughts. There's a bigger, more positive, usually more capable person, but it's that little voice says, well, you shouldn't do it, and you're not smart enough, and you haven't earned the right yet, and all those other things that chime in there that tend to limit us, that cause worry and upset and depression and stuff like that. So that's why I try to let people know to isolate it, because it is possible to control it. It is possible to master it and move it out of the way so you can have an extraordinary life.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I've already seen some of the results after reading your book. So it's really helpful to mitigate and master that. So you talk a lot in your book about how these little voices form and how they can have a negative impact on people. What are some of the ways that people can manage these little voices to their benefit?
Oh, well, that's a great question, Ted. And I think the first thing to understand is that you, like we said before, is that you have a little voice. See, most people, that conversation going on in their head, they just believe everything that's going on. And so whatever their latest internal chatter is the direction they take. So the first thing to manage it is to realize you have one. And then you can separate yourself from it. Okay, I think that's the first thing. Second thing is to notice the pattern particularly the negative patterns that show up. Like every time, like for a lot of people, they don't like public speaking. That's a common one. So what happens is every time the idea of getting in front of a group of people, they get nervous, little voice goes crazy. So you begin to notice, okay, so that's where it continues to show up, because once you do that, then you can third step is apply techniques to overcome it when it shows up. Now there's a fourth technique, which is even better, a little more involved, and that is to find out where the heck that little voice came from to begin with. What was the incident or the prior experience or the old advice that you got from somebody, if you got in trouble. I always tell people, if you ever got in trouble, like when you were little, like I remember getting in trouble when I was about 4 years old, and my mom was not happy. And so I thought I was doing something good. I tore all the drywall off the wall, with my little wooden hammer. Right. And I just thought that was great. And I still remember to this day. And she was not very happy about that at all. And I learned very early on not to get my mom upset. So why do I use that as an example? Well, so you go through life always worried about getting other people upset because you had a really bad experience with it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can even interpret that to not only not getting your parents upset, but getting women upset or all that other thing. And all of a sudden you find you're still responding the same way you did when you were 4 years old, which is like crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the way the brain works. It just works off of repeated patterns. And so what I was saying is the ultimate way to control it is to get good coaching from somebody that can help you find out where that stuff came from. And you go, and you laugh about it or you cry about it or whatever. And you just say, okay. And now your brain now has a choice. You don't have to be on automatic pilot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that's, you talk a lot about finding the origins of where it came from, and then specifically analyzing it as well. And a lot of the past experiences that I've had as well when my little voice comes in is because, same as you, sometimes I upset my parents. And
well, I will tell you that's probably that everybody's got a bank of little voices that start with their parents, because at that age you're impressionable, and as a parent now you're going, oh my God, did I just say that? Now you get paranoid because you don't want to do that to your kids, but you do it anyway.
Right.
It's not because there's bad intent.
Mm-hmm.
And now you see as you have conflict between generations, like you have the boomers and then you have the millennials and the Gen Xers and all that other stuff. So each generation passes on its own psychosis to its own kids that they either adopt or rebel against. And so it makes it all kind of interesting.
Right. Yeah. And that's a really interesting thing that I hadn't really pondered before. So you talked a lot about how we've had experiences that we don't want to disappoint or upset anyone. But you also talk in your book about how that can potentially limit people's authenticity. So What are some of the ways that being able to master your little voice can increase authenticity?
Well, that's a good one. That's a real good one. First one is to understand why it hurts your authenticity. And that is obviously if you're afraid of getting your boss upset, or you're afraid of getting your spouse upset, or your boyfriend, girlfriend, or friends, then you're going to be walking on eggshells all the time, right? And so that's not a great way to live. And so that's why, what you do is you don't act your normal self. You try to be nice and polite. You don't want to tell the truth all the time because you just don't want people upset. That's not the real you. You're putting on this other image or facade in order to keep the peace. That's a real common of authenticity. So how do you get around it? Well, the way you get around it is, first of all, understand that that's what's happening. Second of all is to find ways to, I will say this as a general statement, is that most people, one of the biggest little voices that stops most people, that prevents authenticity, is your fear about what other people think about you. Mm-hmm. This is what blocks sales, prevents people from starting businesses, creates a wedge in the middle of relationships. It's your concern about what other people think about you, which all started way back whenever. Mm-hmm. So anything you can do to lose that fear. Some things you can do, is immersion. We'll talk maybe a little bit later about practicing public speaking. If you don't like public speaking, don't be a public speaker, but just maybe take Toastmasters or something like that, just so you can get past your fear about other people. Mm-hmm. That's why I say sales is such a great thing to do, because in sales, I say sales is an emotional contact sport, right? Mm-hmm. So every day you have to face rejection. So I hated it when I started, but it was the best training in the world, because the more you face the dragon, the easier it is to slay the dragon, So that's repetition's obviously a way to get around that kind of fear and to be yourself. The other thing you can do is to obviously be in an environment and hang around people that truly can take you for who you are and get some good feedback. I've been very blessed. You know, your dad has been a great friend and business partner for many years, and he will always tell you the truth, right? Whether you like it or not. And I love that, you know, and most of my friends are like that. So you learn to hang around with people that you can trust, and really just play to your strengths.
Right. Yeah, my dad is definitely brutally honest, and my mom is as well. So growing up with the both of them, there's a bunch of crazy little voices going on in my head, but you know, after reading your book, it's really helped me manage that. But it's all, you know, it's all love. It's not like they.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not ill intent. It's just that
Right.
we all have our habits and our way of responding to the world.
Yeah, and that's a fair point to raise. So a lot of what we talked about relates to how things shape us, and how it ultimately could affect our self-concept. Now, there was a quote you included in your book that I really like, and it states, "You can never outperform your self-concept." And I thought that was really, it really hit the nail, you know, grand slam. I can't think of what metaphor to use, but you know, you hit it out of the park there, because eventually you have a ceiling, right? And your self-concept can't ever get past it.
That's right.
If you raise it, you know, beyond what people can see right now,
Right. That's right.
then you can reach greater heights. So how exactly can people raise their self-concept to unlock their unlimited potential?
Well, first of all, I wish I could take credit for that quote, but it's not my quote. Okay. So that quote actually came from a great teacher and mentor of mine, a guy by the name of Mac Newton. He's a 9th degree black belt in Taekwondo. He's 2-time world champion. He's about 75 years old now. He's got a ring and a World Series ring because he was conditioning coach for the Dallas Cowboys, the Oakland A's. He's been the coach of the greatest major league stars in the world. And that was his quote. Also, Jimmy Connors said that once too. But here's what he said. He said he's worked with some of the greatest athletes in the world, 44-inch vertical jumps, eye-hand coordination. They could blindfold them and they could catch a pass, a football with one hand with their eyes closed. Just amazing, almost freakish talent. But he says, but there are some of those guys that never could win. And the reason they couldn't is because there was something, not because of their talent, it's because their self-concept was too low. Somewhere inside, they felt they didn't deserve it. They're not good enough. They're not smart enough, not experienced enough. They're really down on themselves. You see that with athletes a lot. They are really down on themselves. One thing goes wrong. Oh, I'm in a slump now. And so he said that you can never exceed your self-concept. So, and your self-concept is comprised of your self-ideals, who you want to be, you know, who your role models are. It could be about your self-image. When you look in the mirror, who do you see? You know, do you see a strong person learning a lot, or do you see a loser in front? You know, it's like, you know, it's your interpretation of it. And most importantly, what he says is your self-esteem. How much do you actually like yourself? And so how do you raise that? Well, what way you raise that is taking any one of the three of those and trying to maximize it. Mac and myself, I'm really big on a little voice technique called affirmations. And so what an affirmation is a positive statement. It's personal, present tense, and positive. So something like, if you're battling self-esteem, you would say something, I like myself. That's it. 3 words. I like myself. I like myself. And you just repeat. So I've watched him work with NFL wide receivers working out next to me in his studio, and he would just stop him in mid, say, I like myself. They don't want to say it. Say it. You know, yell at him. And you say it 10 times. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. He says, now do the move. Boom. And it's just, it's almost surreal to watch the difference that how the body responds to internal dialogue when you redirect it in a focused way. So affirmations, I like myself. I'm great in sales and I give people what they want. My body and immune systems are strong. You know, whatever it is that have to do with your core values, things that are important to you, and you affirm that. That's one way of doing it. The other way of increasing self-concept is to get really good at what you do, is preparation. You can do anything you're prepared to do. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is people set themselves, I do a lot of sales coaching. A gentleman asked me the other day on our Facebook group, he goes, well, I show my salespeople a 1-hour sales presentation. They watch the sales presentation twice, and then they're supposed to go out and sell. He goes, they make 2 presentations and then they don't do it again. What do I got to do to get them to overcome the fear? I go, dude, man, that is like giving the keys of a Ferrari to your 13-year-old kid and say, go drive around the block. It's kind of like they're going to run into a tree. Then they're going to run into a stop sign. They're going to run off the road. And they're never going to get a win out of that because you didn't teach them how to drive first. Mm-hmm. So one of the things, I have a quote on my wall is that says the secret that has made every great person great and produced masterpieces is to mastering the parts or the pieces of the game before you try to master the whole game. You got to drill, you got to practice, like skiing. You start with snowplow, and then you start with French fry wedges, and then before you start going down a double black diamond run. Mm-hmm. So the way you raise your self-concept is is training, it's affirmations. And again, it's like I said, my default to all of this is good coaching too.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And that's a really good point to bring up. And, I'm happy you brought up that skiing reference because it's something that can relate to me. I started skiing at a very young age. I started at 2. And then eventually I started training, regular ski racing gates. And initially I wasn't that good, but then I just kept persevering. I kept pushing through. And then when I went to high school, I won a state championship with my team. So I think a lot of that was due to the fact that I didn't give up and I had other people pushing me. And, I learned how to master each little piece before mastering the game there.
That's right.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who tend to just give up beforehand. And in your chapter, you mentioned 4 reasons why people fail. Can you go through some of those reasons and what are the solutions to some of them?
Well, you just mentioned one of them, that they quit too soon. Mm-hmm. They quit too soon. They get impatient because they're not getting the big time result they want. And so they quit just before they get to a place where they become competent. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, let's say you're trying to learn a foreign language, like Russian or something. Okay, or Chinese. So you're trying to learn Chinese, and in the beginning, your frustration level is really high, and your competence level is really low. So it's a bad combination, but you keep struggling with it, and the dial doesn't move too much in the beginning, right? And so what happens for most people is say, well, I'm just not cut out for this, and they quit. Mm-hmm. Where if they just keep with it a little bit longer, they'll get to a place where they'll get their confidence will come up a little bit, their frustration will come down a little bit, and they'll come to this place and go, oh, I got it. I think I can really do this. Mm-hmm. Now they're off to the races. Now they've got the energy to keep going, to keep studying, Mm-hmm. So, but most people don't. They're very impatient and they quit too soon. That's one of the reasons people quit. One of the other ones obviously is fear. I mean, some people can't win because they just freak out. It's like they think about all the negative things that are going to happen and they worry. And worry is really kind of crazy because most people, if you took it 100% of the worry, probably 40 or 50% is worrying about things you've already done that you can't do anything about anyway. Then the other 50% is the future, right? So, and in the future, 50 of that 50%, easily 50% of that is stuff that's probably never going to happen anyway, right? And so you're left really, so out of the 100% of things you're worried about, it's only 25% that's worth thinking about, right? So it's the process of being able to stay very present, and that's one way to eliminate the fear. Mm-hmm. What was the other one? Oh, we talked about self-concept. That's the other reason people fail, even that have tremendous talent, is that I've seen. My son plays in high school. He played football, and I watched a lot of his friends and athletes. Great, unbelievable talent, but they just couldn't pull it across the line because their little voice was beating them up. It's like so that's that whole self-concept. But here's another one. This is a big one. One of the other reasons people fail is fatigue. They just wear out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you don't have to be an old person to wear out. They just run out of gas. And I don't know about, but you'll find this, Ted, because you're a state champion in skiing. So, and you're going to law school. So, and you've traveled the world. And so, these things. Most people your age don't know these things, is that it takes a lot of energy to pull all that off. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would definitely agree, because I've been on a few Rich Dad events. I went to Chile once. I went to Australia twice. And some of these events are 11, 12 hours a day. I mean, it takes it out of you. And
right.
I've seen my dad get fatigued. I've seen Robert, even I've been fatigued as well.
Right.
And for you and the advisors, it's the same way. I mean, it takes a lot of energy to do what you do, but you guys have done a very good job at it.
Well, thank you. But it's not just what we do. I mean, if you're going to start a business, it takes a lot of energy. If a person has any kind of dreams whatsoever of what they want for themselves, for their futures, for their families, I don't care what it is. Any dream of any size is going to take a lot of your energy. Whether it's to be a skiing champion, whether it's to be a lawyer, whether it's to be a parent, whether it's to start a business, whether it's to make $1 million, whatever it is that you want to do, it's going to take a lot of energy. And so what happens is people don't succeed because they run out of it. They don't have enough. Mm-hmm. Their body gives out, their brain gives out. And the reason for that, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, people are in horrible shape and they don't take care of their bodies. That's a big one. That's a very big one. And I don't understand that. I've always been very adamant about what I do on that side. But there's another mysterious one that people might not recognize. And I talk about it in the book. Is that as you go through life, we all have setbacks, things that happen to us, like maybe when you first went to school, kids made fun of you because you came from a different part of town, or you had a girlfriend in high school and she broke up with you, or all these. And so every time you try for the basketball team, you don't make it, or you go to take a shot in a game and you miss. Mm-hmm. So every time that happens, one of my teachers calls it life force particles. It's kind of like your energetic self. Mm-hmm. A little of that goes away. You lose a little. And so then you go to get a job. You don't like your boss. You lose more energy there. You try something else, doesn't work out. You lose something there. So by the time you get to be in your 20s, 30s, 40s, if you started out with, let's say, 1 million units of energy, of natural spiritual energy, by the time you're 20 or 30, you've lost 75% of it, unless you practice little voice techniques. And so, because every time you do that, every time you do the affirmations, every time you find out where that came from, that energy comes back to you. That's the good thing. It's not gone forever. It just means that you got to reclaim it. And you see people, I'm sure you've seen people out there, they're very cynical. They're skeptical of everything. They don't trust anybody. They're grumpy all the time. Even when they get a win, they go, yeah, well, it was just lucky and won't happen again. And, all that stuff. And that's because they haven't taken the time to do what I call personal development work on themselves. Everybody understands about physical development. You need to keep yourself in good physical shape. But equally as important, particularly now more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on, if you're not working as much on your mind and your emotions, you will be a casualty. I always say this, I go, the words recession, depression, and inflation, those are not just economic terms, those are psychological terms. And they go hand in hand. And the cure for one will cure the other. It starts in here. Mm-hmm. People, it's right now going into a global depression, possibly. For sure, we're in a global recession. But it could be, for some people, it's going to be it's the greatest opportunity of a lifetime. For other people, they're like, the world's coming to an end. Mm-hmm. So it's the same instance. It's how your little voice is filtering it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I totally agree. Things have been pretty hectic, but as I mentioned before, a lot of these things have really been helping me out. I've been going through some of the techniques. And fortunately, the last part of your book talks about 20 some different techniques of how to master your little voice. You talked about affirmations, but are there other important little voice mastery techniques that you would like to share?
Sure. There's 20, there's not another 19 of them, but yeah, I mean, there's just a few. I won't go into all of them, but the simplest one, and we do it all the time, and we do it with our kids when they're little. We do it when we play sports.
Mhm.
Is that whenever you get a win of some sort, then what you should do is you should celebrate the win. We call celebrate all wins. If you ever watched women's volleyball on TV or whatever, you'll notice that after every point, win or lose, they high five each other, right? Why? Because it brings energy up. It's a positive anchor. We call that an anchor holds a boat in place. So in our brains, we have positive mental anchors and we have negative ones. Negative anchor would be the last time you screwed up doing something. Positive one, last time you have a win. So before you're going to make a sales call, before you're going to do a presentation, you recall a time when you had a win. And if you celebrate it again for a moment. Yes. And what it'll do is immediately bring your energy back, at least for a few moments. Mm-hmm. So celebrating all wins is critical, because if you don't celebrate wins and then later you try to recall a win, you won't be able to do it because you haven't been isolating them. So that's probably the most important, the biggest one. We do it with our kids when they take their first step, speak their first word, mm-hmm. Run their first race mm-hmm. through the gates, all that stuff, right? We celebrate. So that's a big one. I think another one has to do with how you filter the world. Some people are naturally pessimists. So no matter what happens, they always see the negative side. Some people are naturally optimists and they always see the positive side. Years ago, a fellow by the name of Marty Seligman, I don't know if I have it here, wrote a great book called Learned Optimism. And they studied, like 30,000 metropolitan life insurance guys. And they tested them. They gave them scenarios of wins that they could have. Imagine that you just won the lottery, something like that. How do you interpret that? Well, some people say, well, I was lucky. Now that's a pessimist. Whereas an optimist would say, I deserved it. I was born to win. Okay, so now some people think that's arrogant, but what they're doing is they are taking ownership of the win. That would be optimist. On the negative side, you would say, and I find this with lots of entrepreneurs, they're very pessimistic about their wins. They'll say, their company they make fantastic sales numbers for the month of July. So how is that? Well, can't get too cocky, can't get too happy about that because you never know what's going to happen next. That's a very pessimistic attitude, as opposed to saying, yeah, we did really, really well and looking forward to leveraging exactly what we learned into the next month and seeing how we can do the same thing again. So again, it's the way you filter the good things and the bad things that happen to you. That's probably a really important one, to be able to step outside of yourself and notice how you're responding to the good stuff and the bad stuff. Mm-hmm. What are some other ones? Some other good ones would be like, I think that when you're have an emotional downtime, when you're not feeling great, is to kind of take a look at how you're feeling about it and say, well, how do I want to feel right now? Okay, so right now I feel lonely or depressed. Okay, I feel lonely and depressed. Okay, but how do I want to feel? I don't want to feel lonely. I want to feel alive. I want to feel happy. And so when was the last time I felt that way? Well, the other day when I talked to my friend on the phone. And so immediately by recalling those things, your energy naturally comes up, and then you'll know what to do to take yourself out of that slump right away. Mm-hmm. Okay. One of the other things, another good little voice technique, very powerful one as a leader, if you have a team, is anytime you have a setback, we call it a debriefing moment. Debrief. Okay, so if something happens, let's say you gave a talk, let's talk about public speaking, and it didn't go so well. Okay, so immediately after it's over, you sit down with some other colleagues, or you could do this yourself, and just ask a couple of questions. Okay, so what happened? Okay, explain. Well, what happened was I got very flustered. Why? Well, because I really didn't prepare too much, is what much I should. What'd you learn? So what happened? Why? What'd you learn? Well, what I learned is I just need to prepare more. Okay, good. Well, and then, so that's good. Or if you're doing it with a team, what worked and what didn't work? Well, what worked is I at least had the courage to go give the bloody talk. Okay, that was good. What didn't work is, again, my preparation, the intro was a little weak. I just need to work on that. Okay, so it's a way of, what most people do is they something goes wrong and they just live with it and focus on it, and it doesn't work, and I'm not cut out for this, and I'm not good in sales, and I'm not good in public speaking. And then that little voice says, it just winds up. So that's why you stop, and always stop and debrief what worked, what didn't work. Okay. And what did I learn? That's the most important question. What am I learning from this? So I have a little expression that I teach people, that an upset, when you're upset, an upset's an opportunity. An upset is an opportunity to get to the truth. The only reason you're upset is because you made a mistake. And a mistake is good because because now you know what you need to learn. So an upset's an opportunity to get to the truth. So if I'm upset, I keep saying to myself, okay, what am I learning? What am I learning? What am I learning? And any lesson that comes in that says I'm a dirt bag is not a good lesson. I throw that one out. Okay. Any lesson says you're a screw up and you're an idiot, I throw that out. So what did you learn that can move you ahead? So it's a mental discipline of turning your little voice around.
Right. Yeah. And some of the 20 techniques I've actually been using, one was dealing with adversity, just learning to isolate yourself individually, saying it's not your fault, sort of step aside and say, what can you learn from this?
Exactly.
That has really helped me. And all the other ones are really helpful as well.
Yeah,
so,
that one, if I could just mention that one for a moment, because I'm really glad you brought that one up. And you did it really well. So what you do is something bad happens, you isolate it, and you say, well, maybe somebody else was having a bad day. It wasn't just because of me. The other thing that people do is to say, and by the way, this has no effect on the rest of my day. The rest of my day is going to be fine. It has nothing to do with my abilities in the future. All that's good. Because what some people will say, it's like, you can't find your keys to your car and you're really upset. You go, this, and you say stupid things like, why does this always happen to me? Mm-hmm. Well, the truth is it doesn't always happen to you, but when you keep saying that it always happens to you, begin to believe that it always happens to you. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. So you go, okay, so I lost my keys. I'm still going to have a great day. This has no effect on the rest of what's going on in my life. It's not a reflection of anything else. And I'm good. I'll call Uber and I'll get a ride. Okay. So that discipline, Ted, of being able to catch your little voice in the process of taking you down and stopping it is the most powerful piece of all. Then you use the techniques, as you mentioned, to re-steer it. And you know what? Chances are you probably find your keys 5 minutes after that.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's pretty crazy. Sometimes it has a snowball effect when a bad event happens and you can't isolate it and say, this is going to be a better day for me after this. And unfortunately, sometimes people fail to do that. But for me, I've been using that technique and it has yielded really great results.
Awesome.
So,
I'm glad.
Yeah. And for those of you who have not purchased it yet, I strongly recommend reading Little Voice Mastery. It teaches you ways how to overcome your little voice and be the best version of yourself. In addition to that, it could also be viewed as a guide for how to survive 2020. And with that being said, thank you, Blair, for coming on. I really appreciate the time.
Well, thank you, Ted. Thank you for the great questions, and thank you for taking on the project. Appreciate it.